So, a very good afternoon, very good evening, all. I'm going to talk about endpoints in cancer clinical trials. Endpoints in itself, when we talk about diabetes or stroke or epilepsy, they are very well defined, and you don't need to kind of apply too much of your mind into what endpoint to be selected. But the game changes when it comes to cancer. Here, there are several types of endpoints that can be selected, and it depends on what is the drug that is being considered and what is the cancer that is being studied. So, well, that's just how an endpoint should be. What are the characteristics that will be there in an endpoint? That's a very generic this thing, that it's an overall outcome that a clinical trial is aiming to measure to determine the safety and efficacy of an intervention. It should be clinically relevant. It should reflect the change in the disease process which is being treated. It should be reliable. It should be responsive, and it should be practical. In terms of cancer clinical trials, the endpoints are usually divided into a patient-centric endpoint, which reflects ultimate clinical benefit to the patient, or it could be tumor-centric endpoint, which is not, which is kind of a surrogate marker for the clinical benefit. Then there are biomarkers and safety-related endpoints as well. In terms of patient-centric endpoints, overall survival is considered the gold standard for oncology clinical trials. It is overall survival is measured from the time of randomization till the death from any cause. That gives us the actual clinical benefit that the drug is going to give in a particular cancer. It's precise to measure. Patient is alive or dead, so that's very easy. Death is a very specific event that there cannot be any biases in its measurement. However, on the flip side, it is very time consuming, especially for cancers which have prolonged longevity based on the treatments available. Second endpoint in terms of clinical benefit is quality of life, which is now emerging as one of the primary endpoints, especially when the existing armamentarium of anti-cancer drugs has improved the lifespan significantly. Now the drugs are focusing. Now we are focusing on changing the drugs to improve the quality of life. So overall survival has already been improved. Disease-free, progression-free survival has already been improved. Now we are focusing on quality of life. So there, in such situations, it is emerging as a primary endpoint. It shortens the duration of these studies as well. However, it comes with a lot of methodological and statistical challenges. How to interpret the data? What are the cutoffs to be taken? There is a lot of subjectivity involved. And there is a particular concern about missing data when it comes to studying quality of life using several scales that are available these days. And then identifying a particular scale. So there are n number of scales which are generic in nature, irrespective of the cancer. Then we have cancer-specific scales as well. Within the cancer-specific scale, there would be a range of scales which would have the number of questions could range from 10 to maybe 100, and there would be several subdomains. So it would depend on what exactly is the intent, how the drug is, what kind of effects we are expecting from the drug. So based on that, the quality of life scale should be selected. Then coming to the endpoints based on tumor assessment, these are time-dependent endpoints. They are based on the indirect measurements on about, let's say, tumor size. So a CT scan or a MRI may be done to see how the tumor size is changing over time. These are used more or less as surrogate markers for the or surrogate endpoints for the clinical trials. Now, when I was talking about overall survival would need to be studied against a comparator. Now, natural progression of disease cannot be a comparator, so a standard of care would be taken as a comparator. But when we talk about tumor-based assessments, they can be done from the baseline also. So, what was the tumor size at the baseline and after the treatment? So, that can be compared with the available data on natural course of the cancer. In this, we have objective response rate, wherein the proportion of patients with tumor size reduction is noted. The amount of reduction and the minimum time period on which the reduction is sustained is predefined in the protocol, and then the objective response rate is calculated. Now, in this, target and non-target lesions are taken based on the study protocol, how it is being defined. A set number of lesions in an organ may be taken as target, and other metastatic activities may be taken as non-target lesions. So measurements are usually by imaging techniques. So as sophisticated the imaging techniques or the progress or the advances in the imaging techniques are, more objective the response assessment becomes. Now, initially there used to be a lot of variation in how the measurement was done, or how, depending upon the availability of the imaging techniques. Then European Union came with a standardized criteria, which is response evaluation criteria in solid tumors specifically, by which the response could be standardized between different sites and between different individuals and different investigators. Then we also have progression-free survival. Progression-free survival is starting from randomization until the objective response is achieved or the patient dies. So it could be progression, it could be death, or it could be an objective response which was defined as has been achieved. So that's progression-free survival. It tends to correlate with the overall survival, especially where the longevity of after the disease progression is not too long, like pancreatic cancer. But where even after disease progression, we have several treatment modalities available which can extend the lifespan even after disease progression. There, the progression-free survival may or may not correlate with the overall survival. Time to progression is it is something like a progression-free survival, but it does not include death. Then you have disease-free survival, wherein time from randomization until recurrence or tumor or death from any cause is taken as disease-free survival. It is usually used in wherein adjuvant, it is most frequently studied in adjuvant settings, wherein definitive surgery or radiotherapy has been done, and now cancer chemotherapy is being studied. So here, in such situations, survival also becomes one of the endpoints. This is just a small example, like wherein trastuzumab was shown to have wide benefit in terms of disease-free survival, but in terms of overall survival, the benefit reduced a little compared to the standard of care. Then there are several other endpoints like time to distant metastasis, time to first subsequent therapy, time to next therapy, and so on, which are being explored, but all of these are more likely to be secondary endpoints rather than the primary endpoint. Then we also have endpoints involving symptom assessment. These are not very frequently used, or these are not very frequently preferred, but based on the time to progression of a cancer symptom, it could be used as a clinical measure of a clinical benefit. However, the assessment is biased, and that's why it is not very frequently used, or it is not preferred overall. So it's just how, so from progression-free survival, which measures, at every visit, the assessment is done and to see whether the disease is progressing or not. Criteria for progression is well established in the protocol itself. From there to overall survival, several intermediate clinical endpoints have been defined, which are being explored for different types of cancers, depending upon the disease pathophysiology. This is just a summary of what I've been talking about so far. Overall survival is looking at death. Progression-free survival is looking at the evidence of disease progression or death. Time to progression looks only at the disease progression, not death. Then event-free survival could be, it's how the event is defined. It could be discontinuation of the treatment or disease progression or death. Disease-free survival is, as I've said, the recurrence of disease or death. Then time to treatment failure, and time to next treatment or time to first subsequent treatment, second subsequent treatment, and so on. So this list goes on increasing and complicates how in the selection process of the endpoint for a particular clinical trial. But then ultimately overall survival and progression-free survival are the most frequently used endpoints for the clinical trials. Then biomarkers are also used not as the primary endpoints but more as an exploratory endpoint. Specifically in the phase 1 and 2 clinical trials, biomarkers are utilized to as a proof of concept, to provide the proof of concept that the drug is actually interacting with the target, is producing some effect. What is the dose response relationship with respect to the biomarker or the drug target interaction? If there are any associated adverse effects, so in these situations, biomarkers are used. So they are particularly useful for initial evaluation in phase 1 and phase 2 clinical trials, but when it comes to phase 3 clinical trials, they are mostly used as exploratory biomarkers to assess or to identify the disease population wherein the drug could be particularly useful, or to whether the biomarker could be used as a prognostic marker for efficacy of the drug or not. It can also, based on these parameters, it can help in the accelerated drug development as well. Then lastly, we have safety endpoints. Safety endpoints are mandatory for all clinical trials. They are usually, so when we talk about cancer chemotherapy, the NCI has given CTC criteria, common terminology criteria, wherein the adverse effects have been defined and their severity grading has been done. So it is, when it comes to cancer, severity grading becomes really important for, traditionally most chemotherapy have been associated with one or the other adverse effects. So that's kind of, some of it would be acceptable, some would not be acceptable. So that's why the severity grading becomes important for safety assessment in clinical trials for cancer. That's about the talk. And US FDA has given a guidance document for selecting the clinical trial endpoints for cancer drugs and biologics. And thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Pooja. Are there any important discussion points or questions?
Thank you, Pooja Madam, for giving us an overview of the various endpoints in cancer clinical trials. So, just one question I had. We have seen a few published studies where they have used well-established biomarkers like alpha-fetoprotein or PSA or CA19-9, and the rise in the levels of the biomarkers have triggered intervention in the form of second-line treatment or salvage therapy without objective evidence of tumor progression. So, do you think this is ethical, even if done in the context of clinical research?
Sir, as far as, so there are two aspects to it. When we are talking about new drug regulatory approvals, there it is not acceptable. But when we are talking about subsequent, once the drug is approved, we are trying to optimize the use, or academic clinical trials are being conducted. Therein, the biomarkers that you've mentioned, they have been studied extensively, and their change in levels have been correlated with disease progression. So in that sense, as surrogate markers, to my mind, they would be acceptable. In fact, I'm doing one of these studies wherein I'm using PSA as a biomarker for prostate cancer.
Okay.
If I may summarize what she said, this is very important aspect of clinical trials in oncology, endpoints. See, we began with all registration trials, they demand overall survival benefit. But as more and more lines of cancer treatment have started appearing, PFS became, progression-free survival became a surrogate, because once you stop one line, the patient progresses, you have another line. And that improves the overall survival. Third line, fourth line. So that's why overall survival, without even impact on overall survival, PFS is becoming an endpoint in many registration trials, number one. And what Madam showed also, PFS2, PFS1 means the first progression-free survival. Then PFS2, the second progression-free survival. This is also in the endpoint nowadays. Number 3, as Sir pointed out, that there are many biomarkers which are also certain endpoints in various trials, but definitely only biomarker is not in a registration trial. It is an additional, subset analysis or an academic exercise. Particularly PSA, as you said, sir, there are many trials which have shown that a particular drug has caused decrease in PSA, but not any impact on the radiology or RECIST criteria which Madam showed. But I would like to point out one thing which she didn't say is with the advent of immunotherapy, RECIST is becoming very dubious, and also targeted therapy, because as I mentioned, there is pseudo progression, not actual progression. So there is a new concept known as I-resist, immune resist. So endpoints are always changing, and quality of life, I would request this August gathering that we are always borrowing quality of life data and the schedule from Western literature. Why doesn't this association develop a quality of life parameter list pertaining to our Indian patient, which is doable? We find it very difficult to do those quality of life. So I think, yes, endpoint will always remain point of discussion, very much important, because remember, imatinib, we had the fusion gene, BCR-APL, 100% in CML patient, and that had objective response of 0%, known as major molecular remission in those patients who had impact of the drug on CML. And another thing which was very important, which is why disease-free survival or progression-free survival has become important, is carryover effect. Suppose I use a targeted therapy for even 1 year and the patient goes off, doesn't come. The patient continues to have the clinical benefit. So that's why only overall survival is no longer the endpoint. Progression-free survival, disease-free survival have been into the armamentarium of endpoints because of carryover effect of different types of treatment. I think it's very late. We can have a lot of discussion. It's very interesting topic, but I have to end the symposium and the session. Thank you, the organizers, for giving me this opportunity, and thanks to Madam for raising many questions for all of us.
Thank you, the organizers.
Praful Mohan sir, thank you Pooja Gupta madam. So now may I request Professor Neha Vishwas sir to kindly felicitate. Also may I request Dr. Saibal Mukherjee sir also please join us to felicitate Madhuchanda for. Once more. Thank you, madam. Thank you. So now we are moving forward towards our next session, and we are really privileged to have with us now Professor Avijit Hazra sir, again who needs no introduction. He is in the field of Indian medical education system. Sir is a doyen figure in the field of pharmacology. Welcome you sir. So please start the session.
Curtains are coming down on the second day of the conference and Sunday evening, so we have only a handful of audience, but knowledgeable audience. So may I request first the speaker, Dr. Melvin George, to step forward. Melvin. So I'll just take a couple of minutes to introduce him as he handles his slides. So Dr. Melvin George, he did his MBBS, MD, as well as DM in clinical pharmacology from JIPMER Pondicherry. After completing his DM in 2012, he joined the SRM Medical College and Hospital and Research Center in Chennai and he has risen through the ranks and is now a professor there in the Department of Clinical Pharmacology. Simultaneously, he has been active in setting up a clinical trials unit in the Hindu Mission Hospital in Chennai, and from 2016, he is running this unit, and as part of his clinical research activity, his areas of interest are acute coronary syndrome, biomarkers in acute coronary syndrome, heart failure and COPD. So he has done and is doing sponsored trials in these areas and also ICMR funded research projects, and is also involved in registry projects related to heart failure and COPD. During the pandemic period, he has been involved in different phases, phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 of the clinical development phase of Covaxin, which is our indigenous COVID vaccine, which has played a very significant role. So, for his academic output, he has over nearly 100 papers in peer-reviewed journals, 8 book chapters, and over 1,100 citations. He is a well-known figure across India. He has gone across the country, participating in various national and regional symposia, and at his own centers, he is involved in biostatistics, research methodology, and clinical ethics. He has regularly organized workshops and conferences. I was fortunate to attend one of them in the pre-pandemic period. So, with this introduction, I'll request Melvin to start his presentation on medical device and the regulations in India. Over to you, Melvin.
Thank you, Dr. Avijit, sir, for your kind words of introduction. Usually when we watch a cricket match, especially if it is a 50-over match, by the time we come to the 47th or 45th over, we'll be seeing mostly the tail-enders batting. And then we know that nothing much is going to happen. But still we hope that at least some miss-hits will go to the boundary for a 6 or a 4. So hopefully I'll try to do something like that for the next half an hour. Is it moving? Okay, fine. So on the screen, you see something. What is that? Can anyone tell? What is this?
It's written out there.
Yeah, it's written, it's an MRI scan, but what is special about this MRI scan is, this is a unique MRI scan that was developed indigenously from India, and this came out in the news just a few weeks back. It was having a technology that was different from the conventional technology that relies a lot on liquid helium, which is a scarce resource currently, especially because of the Russia-Ukraine war. And that is something, a big step for the medical device industry to have such a sophisticated device being developed in India indigenously. So if you look at the Indian medical device market, it is said to be around $11 billion, $11 billion US dollars, that is around 90,000 crore. It contributes almost 75% of its total market size is mainly from imports. So that is, it is highly import dependent market. There are approximately 1,000 manufacturing sites in our country for medical devices, 200 sites for in vitro diagnostic kits, and this is one industry that allows 100% foreign direct investment. Not every industry in India is this way, and to a large extent price control is not as much as you see in other industries, except in the case of cardiac stents and knee implants. Of course, this is changing. So there was a report that was published by Deloitte in 2016, which was trying to evaluate the whole medical device market. And they made some very strong conclusions about how the Indian medical device industry is, at that point in 2016. It had a very unfavorable duty structure, heavy tax, low domestic demand for many of the products, absence of a clear-cut law, because most of drugs were, most of devices were not regulated, and there was no proper quality certification policy, and even the entire ecosystem for developing medical device was highly inadequate, and there is no structured model to develop medical devices in India, and most importantly, the ease of doing business was extremely poor. At that point of time, it was almost around 140, the rank ease of doing business in India. And the labor laws, of course, were restrictive, and the higher cost of financing to develop medical device indigenous manufacturing facility. So, but at the same time, this graph shows that a lot of devices, India was slowly becoming independent and able to manage by itself. At least devices like suturing materials, bandages, dressings, consumables, syringes, needles, catheters, those kind of simpler devices, we were less reliant on outside imports. But when it comes to the more sophisticated devices which relied on higher technology, we most likely needed imports for the same. And if you look at the manufacturing landscape also, it is not uniformly distributed. You will find a lot of manufacturing capabilities in the state of Tamil Nadu, Maharashtra, Andhra Pradesh, and a few places in and around the rest of the country. So what this report ultimately came to say was there is a lot of scope for improving the healthcare system in India if India is able to contribute directly to medical device manufacturing, where we develop our own medical devices, so that substantially brings down the healthcare costs that a patient is having to afford. Because we all know that currently in India, almost it's only around 25% of the population who have an insurance. Rest 75% of the population is depending on out-of-pocket expenditure for their hospital bills. And medical devices contribute almost 30 to 40% of the whole financial burden that a hospital has to take to develop a hospital in the first place. So we can bring down the cost of healthcare substantially if we have a strong medical device capabilities within our country. And we often see news items like this, where fake medical equipment racket being busted, okay, in different places. So the point I'm trying to say is that there is a strong need for a appropriate regulatory mechanism in the country, which was lacking for a long time. Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940 and Drugs and Cosmetic Rules 1945 were the guiding light for medical devices also. So they were medical devices were considered under drugs itself and regulated likewise. And then we had the medical device rules coming up in 2017, and the medical device amendment rules coming in 2020, and most recently the National Medical Device Policy in 2023. So until 2018 January, medical devices were hardly regulated, you could say. As I told you, under Drugs and Cosmetic Act 1940, the definition of devices, that is those devices intended for internal or external use in diagnosis, treatment, mitigation or prevention of disease, which are specified by the DCGI office from time to time, will be considered for regulation. And the story started in 1989 with 3 devices being considered as notified devices, which are considered as drugs, which will be regulated by the office of the DCGI. Subsequently, this list expanded in 2005 to 10, and in 2017 it expanded to 37. It was only in 2018 when we had this medical device rules, 2018, that things started, the regulatory standing for medical devices fell in place. And in 2020, there was a landmark event which happened, and that is the Medical Device Amendment Rules. So this stated that henceforth all medical devices will be regulated in the country, and it also gave a deadline for this devices to be regulated. I will come to that. So, Medical Device Rules 2017, what does it contain? It talks about the regulation of medical devices in terms of its classification and principles of manufacturing, product standards. It talks about what are the various authorities that are constituting this, who govern this whole structure of the medical device regulatory system. It talks about manufacturing for sale and distribution, import and of medical devices, what should be there in the labeling of the medical devices, how do trials with medical devices happen, how it should happen, import and manufacturing of medical devices which do not have a predicate use, that is, they do not have a particular model in India, in the country, it's a unique model, it's a unique device, then how does the system work for it? And then it talks about the responsibilities of a medical device officer, registration of a laboratory for test or evaluation, sale of medical device and export of device and exemption. So there are 12 chapters and there are 8 schedules which again talk about important aspects of the classification of medical device and in vitro diagnostic kits, the fee structure, and it talks about also notified bodies. I'll come to that in a minute. It talks about the different documents required for grant of manufacturing and import of license, the quality management systems to be in place, and the post-approval requirements and requirements to conduct trials and the exemptions. So the first thing we need to know is risk classification of medical devices. So medical devices are now classified into 4 categories: low risk, low moderate risk, moderate high risk and high risk, class A, B, C and D. So the class A is the least risk kind of device, something like catheters, disposable perfusion sets, surgical dressing material, whereas a high risk device, class D, would be cardiac stents, septostomy catheters, high density array catheters. So the more invasive the device is being used, there is more chance that the risk is high, and so it is categorized as high risk. So the regulations are different based on the category that the device belongs to. So if you look at this table, the data requirement and timeline to obtain license, I'm not going into the details, but one important thing I would tell you is that the clinical trial requirement is there only for class C and class D devices. So for class A and class B devices, clinical trials are not required. That's the most important thing I want to tell you here. And we have the central licensing authority, which is largely involved in regulation of class C, class D devices, which are definitely having a higher risk. Whereas for class A and class B devices, it's largely the state licensing authority that is involved in regulating these devices. In addition to that, we have a national accreditation body, which is approved by the CDSC office, and this body in turn will regulate the notified bodies and inspect the notified bodies. Notified bodies are in turn agencies, private agencies, which would do the inspection of facilities which are performing manufacturing of medical devices, both class A, class B initially, and then subsequently based on their experience that they get, they would also be allowed to inspect class C and class D facilities. So the notified bodies are the ones which are directly involved in the audit and the inspection of medical device manufacturing facilities, and they would be accredited by the national accrediting body, which is again under CDSCO. So the standards for medical devices in India are laid down by the Bureau of Indian Standards or any other as notified by the central government from time to time. If there are no standards for a particular medical device, if ISO standards are available, that would be used. If nothing is available, if there are no standards, it's absolutely novel device, then the device would have to follow the validated manufacturer's own standards. And even for just as how we have drugs, even for devices, if a manufacturer of a medical device has found that there is one of his device is unsafe, he has a duty to have a recall procedure in place so that immediately the safety risk is reduced. We have something called as ISO 13485 Quality Management System, which is a universally accepted standard published by ISO. So this is available exclusively for medical devices, and it is increasingly encouraged that medical device companies use this ISO standards for developing their device. So I was talking about Medical Device Amendment Rules 2020 earlier. This is a very landmark event which happened just before the pandemic began, where it stated that henceforth all devices, no matter what kind of device we are dealing with, if it is a device that is used for diagnosis, prevention, monitoring, treatment, alleviation of any disease or disorder, or for any injury or disability, or investigation, replacement or modification or support of anatomy or physiological process, or for supporting or sustaining life, or disinfection of medical devices, or control of consumption. If a device falls under any of these categories, it would henceforth be regulated by the CDSCO and would require registration. So the medical device market, which was highly unregulated environment all these years, now had to fall in place. So this was something that was welcomed by most of the major medical device players, and they had given a deadline as to by when this should happen. So it is expected that the Class A, Class B devices should have got their licensing by August 2022, whereas for Class C and D, it was supposed to be August 2023, and now that is pushed to October 2023. And even the supply chain also requires the same kind of licensing registration. So when you talk about medical devices, when in terms of its development, how does medical device development take place? It would start with preclinical activities to determine whether the device is safe and effective. So we have something called as bench testing, technical testing. Sometimes computer simulations may be used if it works, if it is available for that particular device, and animal studies also. So this would be done prior to the clinical trial. So what is bench testing? So bench testing is basically where the device in a laboratory or a workshop testing, we assess the device for its performance and safety. That is not with the patient, but just the device per se. Okay, whether it is able to do what it is expected to do. The technical testing also needs to be done. That is the engineering quality, the material that is used, the mechanical elements, the accuracy, reliability of the instrument. All these needs to be checked during the technical testing. For some devices, there would be possibility of using computer simulations. Then those could also be done so that we could predict how successful the device is even before we start testing it in humans. And then we have the animal studies. Again, efficacy testing in animals may not be always possible, but if it is possible, that should be attempted before we start doing it in human beings. And then we have the clinical trial, which is done in drugs. We have phase 1, phase 2, phase 3 trials. So for devices, we don't call it as phase 1, phase 2, phase 3. We call it as pilot studies and pivotal studies and post-marketing studies. So the form to do a clinical trial, it's called Form MD22. So you submit this application to the office of the DCJ. So I'm not going into those details. So how is the first study done? The first human study, which is called a pilot or a feasibility study. This is a study that is done in humans to understand essential information about the device before moving to the large scale pivotal trials. So the pivotal trials can be considered like phase 3 trials, whereas the pilot study is the early phase 1, phase 2 trials. So usually 10 to 30 participants. It's highly exploratory in nature, mainly to understand the safety of the device, how the device performs in humans in terms of its effectiveness in measurement, prevention, treatment, whatever we are looking at. And through this study, we are expecting that we can modify the device and change the design of the device for future purposes before it goes to the pivotal phase of the trial. And this particular trial is also expected to teach us what is the ideal eligibility criteria to be used when designing the phase 3 trial. So this is the purpose of doing this pilot feasibility trial. All the other rules that come for drug trials hold true even for device trial, meaning if there is there should be a ethics committee approval, there should be a CTRI registration, so all those principles apply even for these clinical trials. When it comes to if there is a serious adverse event, the serious adverse event management happens the same way as how it happens for regulatory drug trials. So compensation, all those details, SAE reporting, everything, the same rules apply. So pivotal study is a confirmatory study, something akin to the phase 3 trial, done in a large number of patients to gather evidence for safety as well as efficacy. For medical devices which doesn't have a predicate medical device but approved outside India, pivotal studies need to be carried out. And prior to conducting a pivotal clinical investigation in Indian subjects, CDSO may sometimes expect a pilot study generated within the Indian population to assess whether the pilot study data are similar to what is there from the Western literature. And then we have post-marketing clinical investigation that is expected to be done after the device is approved to monitor the long-term effectiveness and safety and usage of the device in the general population. And it's also required by CDSO. So same PSUR system is also expected for medical devices. The government of India has also launched several schemes to improve India's ability to manufacture medical devices. There is something called as a production linked incentive, PLI scheme, which is basically an incentive given to companies if they manufacture their medical device within Indian soil, they would be provided incentives for the same. So based on this, there are several companies which have, even global companies which have come forward and successfully got this PLI scheme and manufactured medical device, and they have marketed it. And there is another scheme which is called as the medical device parks. So this was a concept again that was basically the states, the different state governments, they were expected to come forward and provide land space to establish medical device parks, which are large facilities that can be used as a common facility for medical device, smaller medical device companies to come and test their products. So that is a medical device park. So this is an application that was brought up by the government of India, and several states have applied, and finally certain states have been shortlisted in the first round, and the medical device parks are right now on its way. It's not fully established in Madhya Pradesh, Tamil Nadu, Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh. We are finding that these parks are coming up. Now coming to the National Medical Device Policy 2023. So this was again another landmark event. In fact, this is considered a bigger landmark event than anything else that happened before in medical device industry. Into 2023, in the month of May, the Prime Minister of India has approved this, the Cabinet has approved this Medical Device Policy 2023. This is a highly forward-looking document. It basically is a visionary document that is built in providing an innovative and globally competitive industry, medical device industry in India, to achieve, so that India achieves 10 to 12% share in the global market within the next 25 years. Currently, it's less than 5%. So under this policy, some of the important missions under this policy include access and universality, affordability of devices, quality of medical devices, patient-centered and quality care, preventive and promotion of health, skilled manpower, security, and research and innovation. So, essentially, the policy has attempted to ensure that every Indian has access to good quality medical devices, which is not the case in India. Currently, if you see, we all know that those who are living in the tier 3 cities might not even have access to an MRI or a CT scan device. As a result of that, the quality of their medical device, the quality of the medical care will obviously come down. So universal access to devices is not there in India. It's a well-known fact, and that is what this policy is stating that we should try to achieve by having low-cost medical devices indigenously manufactured within our country. Making healthcare affordable by essentially having medical devices available at, again, lower cost. At the same time, not compromising on the quality of these medical devices just because we are having a low-cost device. And ultimately, through all these advancements, we are supposed to see that patient outcomes really improve. So, it's not just about getting these devices, but to see that these devices translate into better patient care. And it's not just about treatment, but also about preventive healthcare, because now we have a lot of devices which are in the preventive space, which are talking about early detection of diseases and prevention of those diseases. Like, for example, there are some companies I know which are looking at detecting people who are likely to develop diabetes. So that is the kind of work that people are doing using medical devices, so that appropriate measures would be taken to see that how their diabetes can be prevented. Skilled manpower, this is definitely a big issue that although there are different people working in medical devices in our country, still there is a dearth of quality skilled manpower, and that the mission, one of the mission is to improve that. And of course, security. We all know that during the pandemic how India struggled because we did not have many facilities manufactured in many devices, drugs manufactured within our country, and we had to rely on other countries, and that has lots of other implications. So if we have our own devices that are developed within our country, and we are also able to give them security in terms of the competition that comes from the rival markets, that would improve their ability to sustain. And finally, to improve the research and innovation ecosystem in our country for medical devices, because ultimately without having our own research and innovative ideas, we will not be able to develop cutting-edge devices. So what are those strategies the government has adopted to improve this medical device sector? So one is, it talks about regulatory streaming, enabling infrastructure, in facilitating R&D innovation, attracting investments in the sector, HRD development, and brand positioning, awareness creation. So when it comes to regulatory streamlining, we all know the challenges that a medical device company would likely have to endure, because there are multiple departments that they have to get clearance from in order to get a medical device approved, and that prolongs the time, and that makes many device companies not interested to come and invest in India. So if we have a regulatory streamlining where there is a single window clearance system, that would obviously facilitate, it will shorten timelines. So they have claimed that we will do this single window clearance system to ensure that the process is standardized, and even the pricing structure also would be facilitated, and there is also a code of ethics that is developed for the ethical marketing of medical devices. The next is to establish infrastructure. that is creation of large medical device parks and medium-sized medical device clusters. As of now, world-class infrastructure facilities for medical devices within India are lacking, and that is why through this system, through this policy, the government is hoping to ensure that these kind of things would be created in different parts of the country, especially closer to the economic zones with good logistics connectivity. Increase in number of medical device testing labs, which is again so very much lacking now, to increase the number of medical device testing labs so that there will not be a long waiting period for the medical device to be tested. And manufacturing of critical components of the medical device, we should not rely on global players, but we should have our own method of manufacturing it, especially when it comes to critical components, so that in case there is some issue, suddenly the whole supply chain doesn't get disrupted. The next is to facilitate R&D innovation. So, a structured interaction of academic institutions with the medical device industry is something that the government wants to facilitate. So, it is hoping to establish centers of excellence for medical devices in premier academic institutions in the country, and to create innovation hubs. So what are these innovation hubs? Basically, this will be academic institutes, startups, hospitals and funding agencies. They will all be networked so that ultimately this innovation hub will enable the development of new innovations, medical devices. And to provide something called as a plug and play infrastructure, wherein a company, let's say I'm a small sized company, I don't have large infrastructure. So for testing my device in the initial stages, I need some sophisticated setup. But I don't have the wherewithal for that, to create that kind of setup. So I would go to these places which have this plug and play infrastructure, which enables me to test my device. So I don't have to invest heavily because of this. The next is attracting investments. This is a bigger challenge. So basically the government has said that they would create an ecosystem for funding, provide seed capital by encouraging more of venture capitalists to fund medical device companies, especially small medical device companies, invite venture capitalists for screening of startup companies, so that identify which are the startup companies which are most promising and fund them through this. Have public-private partnerships, use the startup mission which the government is already doing for other industries to develop medical device industries, and leveraging the already existing policies like Make in India policy, Ayushman Bharat scheme, so that the domestic manufacturers will get precedence over the other manufacturers. And this is very important, that to do all this, ultimately we need trained, skilled manpower. So the government looks to establish people who have qualifications in terms of their ability to bring out medical devices. So skilling, reskilling, upskilling of professionals, the government is planning to develop using the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship program ecosystem. The government is planning to develop programs exclusively to train people to come out with medical devices. So there are going to be a lot of multidisciplinary courses for medical devices, and many academic institutions are going to be involved in working with foreign academic as well as industrial organizations to come out with medical devices. So this is the Ministry of Skill Development Entrepreneurship website. You can go and have a look at this, the Skill India program. So it will be connected with this to develop this medical device entrepreneurship and academic programs. And finally, the brand positioning and awareness creation. The Ministry of Commerce and Industry is involved in this. They will try to build global competitiveness by basically trying to see how the there are so many market issues that are there that prevent access for India to export their products. So if they can initiate studies to find what are the best global practices for manufacturing and skilling systems, and at the same time promote awareness about medical device safety across all sectors, and also provide a forum to bring all the stakeholders together so that there is a strong network as well as knowledge sharing capabilities. So how is the government planning to check whether all that they are hoping, which is maybe now it looks like a dream, but how is the government going to check? So that they are going to develop metrics for evaluating it. So they are basically going to see, is there an equity in access and affordability of safe medical devices? Is there a self-reliance in manufacturing more than before? Is there an improvement of overall health index and reduced disease burden in India as well as the other emerging economies? Is the job market in R&D and innovation, particularly related to medical devices, gone up? Has the market size increased? Has the exports increased? Has the FDI increased? So these are some of the metrics that the government is going to come out with to see that this policy, 2023 policy for medical devices is successfully coming out. So in conclusion, I would say that the medical device industry is definitely growing rapidly, especially in the last 5 to 7 years. Thanks to the development of these new evolution of these new regulations, there is much more clarity than before for a medical device company to do serious work in India. And the medical device policy 2023 has a definite capacity to transform the device industry substantially if implemented, and automatically that would change the healthcare in a large way. Patient care ultimately is going to be improved, and that is ultimately what we are all looking for. So if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
So thank you, Melvin. This is a new area for most of us, and you have made us medical device regulation literate. So if not a ball in every, 6 in every ball, you have scored a few sixes in the last over. So we'll open this for discussion, but before that I just wanted to make a brief comment. We have come a long way. I remember 15 years back when we attended a workshop in Delhi where ICMR, at that time Dr. V.M. Katoch was the Director General, was desperately trying to develop an indigenous glucometer. From that we have come a long way, and the first slide which Melvin showed, that's a liquid nitrogen cooled MRI device replacing liquid helium, which is much more expensive and difficult to obtain. And if that technology succeeds, we like, instead of lithium ion battery for e-vehicles, using a sodium ion battery. Anyway, it's open for discussion.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
In one of your slides, you said that devices which do not have a predicate device in the country, if it has to be imported, then a pivotal study is required.
Yes, sir.
What about products which are manufactured either in India or imported, but do have a predicate device in India? Then do you require any kind of comparability or any kind of trial at all?
Yes, sir. If it is a Class C, Class D device, definitely it would require a clinical trial in India. And they have to show that there is effectiveness and there is safety. And again, for this also there is an exception. If it is a device that they can show that it is for a life-threatening condition and there is really a need for that device to come in the market immediately because it would help the population, then they would waive off that particular requirement. But otherwise, generally, for Class C and D devices, there is a need for a clinical.
If you have a predicate device or you don't have a predicate device, you do require a pivotal.
Yes.
Okay. And the concept of comparability, for example, for drugs, we have when a generic drug comes, you have to do a bioequivalence study to compare with approved products. For devices, is there anything comparable, anything of a similar kind?
Yeah, so they have not laid any standard as to what should be for every medical device, what should be the standard that it should be compared with. So by and large, it is what is the general market leader is compared with a new device that suppose if I have a device, I have to compare my device and show that number one, it is safe, and number two, it is comparable with what is existing in the market.
Existing. So how does one define a predicate device? What is a predicate device?
So a predicate device is essentially something that is a device that is new, meaning for the first time it is there in the country and there is no other company which is currently using that device, and it is the company which has brought out the device. And so if I'm bringing a device that is equivalent to that, at least in terms of its function, then that would be my predicate device. Because they have already marketed, it is going on successfully, I have to show my device is as good as that.
As good as in the sense that there will have to be...
In terms of its safety and in terms of its...
So would there have to be a comparability?
Yes, yes.
It would be a...
Yes. Like a clinical trial.
Like a clinical trial,
Yes.
comparability. So I have to buy
But they have
that
not
device.
defined, but they have not defined like how we do, like for example, in the case of drugs, we know for almost most of the major diseases, what is considered as clinically significant, all those things are very well defined. We don't have those kind of minute details when it comes to medical devices.
Yeah, but of course, one can do that. I was just wondering then, because drugs they come in a range of the price of a drug, but devices can vary such a lot. So if I have to do a comparative study and buy the other person's device to do that comparability study, I don't know how feasible that might be in certain cases.
So that's what they have. At the moment, the emphasis is more on providing data rather than showing superiority. Showing data that your device works and showing data that your device is safe. Not showing data that your device is superior to an existing brand.
Yeah, in drugs also we do non-inferiority, so comparable.
Yeah.
So you have to use some statistical means to
Yes.
be able to say
Comparable. It should be comparable.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks,
Thank you,
Melvin.
sir.
Thanks,
Yes.
and very good presentation.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, Rohan, you're next. Let's,
Excellent
Yes, sir.
lecture. As Dr. Hazra told, we are really enlightened.
Thank you, sir.
A lot of learning from your lecture. You told that 5% we have global market. Those are like stent or like that, or even you are considering, say, high-end equipments like MRI, CT scan.
No, sir. So, to be honest, the Indian device market, indigenous production is more with the lower end devices, Class A and Class B. In fact, Class A and Class B devices are the drivers currently when it comes to the market size.
Like catheter and
Catheters and all those things, yes.
Yeah. It's really a ambitious plan,
Yes.
as you told that 10 to 12% global share market within 25 years. But the problem is our quality. For the last 10 years, we are buying, starting from this thing, even during the Corona period, small things. Everything is coming from China, coming from Hong Kong, coming from Korea. Very few are our own indigenous items.
And you can make out which one is ours because the quality is so poor.
Yes.
So this is so that I am skeptical. But we have our skilled manpower, but there is no consistency, and more important, there is nobody to overlook. Means the follow-up, and that is lacking. Like in drugs also, there is very few drugs.
we have the capability. We are landing rovers on the moon, and this is not
Yeah,
rocket science. So,
there
but
is
we have not channeled our
There
efforts in
is
the
some
field.
lackings, there is some gap, there is some flaws, I think. Even you see drug testing lab, how many are there? And we are making spurious and low quality drugs,
So-
sending to other country.
I think the government's intention is to concentrate on this field
There
and
is a lack of manpower, CDS.
Yes, sir. Currently, there are only 23 notified bodies which are available to go and inspect this device testing, device manufacturing centers. So, a country as huge as India, having 23 centers is so lacking. It's meaning we need to upgrade ourselves in terms of having more manpower to go and do a quality check of these centers at periodic intervals. So
Correct. So sometimes I'm wondering that is government intentionally doing it less manpower? I don't know. It's very.
Basically, we have to build our whole in infrastructure as well as ecosystem from scratch.
Like this Ayushman Bharat you pointed out, it's a total failure. You see, for fake data, say this hospital, they have given Ayushman Bharat.
A lot of teething problems are, we'll not go into that, but.
Man-made problems. They are making false bill, perjury bill, patient is not being treated, sending wrong bill. So it's corruption. Okay, thank you.
Rohan had one question.
There's this whole thing, Rohan. Yeah, next is just allow me 2 seconds. For drugs, we have inspectors, drug inspectors. Why is it for devices there's 23 inspecting bodies required?
sir, even for devices, there is something called as medical device officer, but it's only that they want to have some specialized people who are fully doing this as a full-time job. So these notified bodies are basically private agencies whose full-time job is to go and do inspection of class A, class B, class C, class D manufacturing centers.
I wish they had the same for drugs also, because, I think that would be a better way to do it.
Thank you so much, sir. As a person who is currently struggling with regulating our own device, I related a lot with what you said. Thank you so much for that. I will quickly come to my question. Sir, in case of a composite device that integrates the data collection from another multi-panel module or another validated data acquisition unit. So in case of such a device where our main focus or main work is regarding the data analysis part, so in that case, can we inherit the regulation? Can we inherit?
It is changing the existing device. If it is not making any substantial change in the safety level of the device, then the regulator might say, okay, we are not expecting a fresh clinical trial. But your innovation has made a substantial change in the device in terms of its efficacy and safety. If they feel so, then they could ask you to do a clinical trial because you have done significant change in this.
So before we close, just 2 very specific and short questions from my side. Devices which are totally non-invasive, say a non-contact forehead thermometer, will that be regulated?
Yes, sir. That will be regulated in the sense the company will have to get a license for that. And they have to get a permit saying that this company is allowed to manufacture this particular device. Previously it was not so. Now it's mandatory for all medical devices, whether it is A, B, C, D, they have to get their license.
Okay. And the second question is, just like in drugs, we have this problem of substandard drugs. We see a lot of diagnostic kits. They're flooding the market, but we are not sure about their sensitivity, specificity, etc. So does this policy have any separate section for diagnostic kits, reagents and kits?
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. So the medical device rules 2017, it has a separate section for in vitro diagnostic kits also. And the same process which we have for evaluating medical devices, class A, class B, class C, D, it is there even for kits in terms of the evaluation of the kit. The kit should be evaluated in a testing laboratory, and that laboratory should be something that is accredited by a NABL lab already. So we have a clear-cut regulations for in vitro diagnostic kits assessment.
Okay.
MDR 2017 rules talks about that, sir.
So with that, we'll close the session. Thank you, Melvin George, for coming down all the way from Chennai to spend a few valuable hours with us.
Thank you.
And I'll hand over the microphone to Dr. Shambo to complete the formalities.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Professor Melvin George. Thank you, Professor Avijit Hazra, sir. Now it is our privilege to felicitate. May I request Professor Nihar Vishwas, sir, to kindly felicitate Professor Melvin George. Sir. Also, may I request Professor Nihar Vishwas, sir, to kindly felicitate Professor Avijit Hazra, sir. Now may I request Dr. Saibal Mukherjee sir to kindly felicitate Nihar Vishwas sir. Also may I request Dhaneria sir to join. Dhaneria sir, please join. Sir, Saibal sir, apni থাকুন. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So now we are moving towards the last session, last academic session, and for that we have with us Dr. Saibal Das. Again, Saibal Das is he is a clinical pharmacologist. Now currently he is scientist D at ICMR Center for Aging and Mental Health, Kolkata. So after that we have GB meeting. So those who had joined online, requesting you to please stay online. After this talk, we will have the GB meeting, a short GB meeting. And may I request Dr. Saibal Das to please kindly deliver your important lecture that is on lifestyle intervention trials. And for the audience, the thing is that you don't think like that this lifestyle intervention trial is placed before your dinner to remind you what to take in dinner, not like that. It is by chance.
So a very good evening to one and all. It's my privilege and pleasure to present this topic in front of all of you. And I would like to thank the organizers of team ACPICon for this wonderful opportunity. And it's a long day, fag end of a long day in a test match, and I have come as a night watchman, and my job is to just survive for the next 15 minutes. And to get the survival strategy, lifestyle intervention is one of the major survival strategy. So when we used to go to our clinics in our undergraduate days, and our teachers used to say that a good doctor knows how and when to use medicine, and the best doctor knows when not to use medicines. And Mark Twain has said a famous quote that physician who knows only medicine does not know even medicine. So even Professor Tripathi also told today, and many times he told earlier, a prescription which contains no drugs or no medicines and only lifestyle intervention can often be the best and most rational prescription. So today in this presentation we are talking about the lifestyle intervention clinical trials. We will discuss about some pitfalls and pratfalls of such trials and various lifestyle intervention trial designs and the way forward. So when we see the literature, we come across studies which shows that lifestyle medicine, a brief review of its dramatic impact on health and survival. But there are also articles which shows that can health promotion also do harm, and evidence for health decision making beyond randomized control trials, and what are the methodological pitfalls and which can actually change the interpretation of an lifestyle intervention trials towards making a clinical judgment. This is one of the study which was published in the BMJ Evidence-Based Medicine, which shows that a number of articles which were published, which have shown that lowering of serum cholesterol levels cause mortality benefit or not, and whether they produce cardiovascular benefit or not. It shows that there are when you see that this y-axis shows the percentage of studies, and the x-axis the bars. The dark one shows when the LDL target was met, and the gray bars show when the LDL target were not met. It shows that there is more mortality benefit when in less number of studies where LDL target was met than LDL target was not met, and similarly for cardiovascular benefits. And these studies essentially involved a lot of lifestyle interventions apart from giving hypolipidemic drugs. And introducing lifestyle intervention trials, why I showed this slide, because it is important to understand how a lifestyle intervention trial is conducted and its major limitations, and how we can overcome this. Unhealthy lifestyle behaviors are key modifiable risk factors for various diseases, and there are various types of interventions to address these risk factors. One major is a lifestyle intervention trial. And there are a lot of lifestyle intervention trials which are often published, and which shows how a novel dietary advice or novel exercise or something like that can change a disease process and have clinically meaningful outcomes. So this is one of a typical example of a lifestyle intervention trial, which actually involves a complicated, rather not so complicated, but a multi-arm trials which involves multiple dietary options in individuals, and does a follow-up period, and you try to assess certain parameters. And this is one of the most commonest trial designs, where the individuals are randomized across multiple groups having different dietary as well as exercise or other lifestyle modifications. This is one of the study which was published in the JAMA Nutrition, Obesity and Exercise, which has showed that continued efforts are needed to optimize lifestyle interventions, because this high risk population and determine which intervention works best for specific individuals based on socio-demographic factors and psychosocial characteristics. Now, the World Health Organization gives so much importance on patient-centeredness in prescribing. So when the doctor prescribes, often it is an one-way traffic, and we doctors do not take the adequate feedback from the patient whether a particular prescription or a particular medicine is okay for a patient to follow, from the adherence perspective, from the ADR perspective, from the cost perspective, etc. Likewise, even for defining an optimal lifestyle intervention for one particular patient might have many acceptability issues to a patient, for which might interfere with its adherence and which might interfere with the final outcomes. So, and also not all lifestyle interventions are useful. This was one of the studies which showed that lifestyle intervention delivered by primary care providers in primary care settings in patients who are at a lower risk of a myocardial infarction did not benefit much from a lifestyle intervention. Rather, the resources would have been better preserved for patients who are having a higher risk of cardiovascular diseases. So we need to optimize from the start of the selection of the patient whom to give and what lifestyle intervention trial to use. So what are the major issues in lifestyle intervention trials? So one of the important factors is that these trials are often complex and have a lot of interacting components. So patients are often advised certain diets to follow, an exercise to do, or certain ways to behave in a particular way, and all these might have an interacting effect, and it is very difficult to understand which one of the particular effect stands out to lead to the change in the final outcome. Then patient preferences and non-adherence. So some lifestyle intervention trials are often so demanding, and often the patient becomes reluctant to follow it for a long period of time, and it often doesn't consider the patient's particular habits and the cultural practices, which might impact the long-term adherence and the final outcomes. Sometimes it is difficult to change the behaviors, and very naturally there is variability of outcomes based on behavioral change. There are a lot of other contextual factors like medications which have an add-on effect to the lifestyle intervention trials, and sometimes these factors lead to issues with internal and external validity of the trials. And it is also very difficult to evaluate the cost effectiveness of a lifestyle intervention trial, because how much for any cost effectiveness study we need to calculate how much cost has been put up in the system, and when it's a lifestyle intervention it is very difficult to calculate the inputs and then equate it to get the benefits. And this was one of the study which shows the motives or the reasons or the barriers of participation in a lifestyle intervention trial. And it shows that participants, this, if you see this bar on the right, this bar diagram is investment in time, interest in the study, poor health and distance from the hospital to the patient's home. These are one of the major factors which were considered as major barriers in participating in a lifestyle intervention factors. And even another study showed that age was one of the factor, education was one of the factor, because it is difficult to comprehend and follow the lifestyle intervention measures by patients having a comparatively lower literacy or having lower intellectual ability. So to minimize non-participation, it is recommended that access to a lifestyle program should be easy and should not cause any financial restraints. We cannot say a patient, poor patient coming from the hospital, that you go and eat almond daily 4 times a day, and other group we compare with peanuts, because it has a financial implication and the patient might not be able to follow it. The other factors, one of the factor I already told, that there are multiple components which interact and there are confounders. And also there is some contextual factors in place, such as at which organizational level you are actually giving the lifestyle intervention. So it is sensitive to the initial condition and tend to be self-organizing through feedback loops, because there is always multiple patients who are involved in a closed system. So and certain practices are actually being inculcated from other family members, from other peers, or from other social networks. So it is often difficult to follow in a particular way than a patient is already accustomed to do so in a given context. So a process evaluation is needed. So delivery mechanisms, intervention components, impact mechanism, what is the process of implementation of a particular intervention trial. So it has to take into factors the contextual factors and the social factors. So going into this is more of a summarized challenges of dietary clinical trials for translation into clinical practice. One, like we often told that there are interacting factors, and then there is methodological problems and weaknesses. And as a result, the patient's adherence is low. There are limitations in the study designs and all. So to design a lifestyle intervention factor which accounts all this variability, it is sometimes difficult. So I'll just give an example, and then I will show you some trial designs where these problems can be overcome. So this was a trial which was published in the Lancet Global Health, which shows a sustainability of a 12-month lifestyle intervention delivered by a community health workers in reducing BP in Nepal. And it says that lifestyle intervention and BP monitoring by community health worker is effective in substantially reducing BP while adults are being monitored in a trial. But following cessation of the intervention, the benefit is not maintained and had a potential for harm. So this also involves certain ethical aspects. So if a particular lifestyle intervention is effective but is not sustainable for a long period of time, once that is withdrawn, the effects are gone and it may be detrimental to the patient. So while planning this kind of study from an ethical aspect also, it is important to consider whether a particular intervention trial is sustainable for a long point of time. So what are the key points during design of such a trial? So firstly, we have to understand what is the target group. So suppose if you are considering a primary prevention of a major adverse cardiovascular event, who will be the target prevention, or versus a secondary prevention? So the target population are different and both won't be having the same kind of a lifestyle intervention. Second, the control intervention, what is the standard of care, what is the best lifestyle intervention, or what will be to follow? There is dilemma in that. So finding a gold standard is also difficult in this case, unlike we have a drug where the guidelines say that this particular drug has to be used, which is well accepted by the clinicians. But only using lifestyle interventions, it is difficult to decide what is a gold standard. Then clinical equipoise, we all know that we can randomize the subjects into 2 arms only if we know that a true uncertainty exists across the 2 different groups. So are we sure here that the different interventions are, we are sure that both the interventions might work in the same way or the different way? Then what is the viability of an intervention? Is it implementable? Is it acceptable? And is it affordable? Then we need to train the patients or train the subjects for the proper adherence based on their socioeconomic status, their educational levels. Then the duration and intensity of intervention, if it is too long, patients will be dropped out, and it might be difficult. And there is another new concept, which is not new concept, there is also counter concept, which is called a drop-in, where patients in the other arm who do not get the active intervention, but if they find that the active intervention is useful, they often try to request to come into the trial in the active intervention groups. So that is the drop-in, which is the opposite of dropout, but that also will lead to statistical heterogeneity and difficulty in designing the study. Then run-in period is also sometimes important to decide who will be having adherent, and those who are not may be dropped out, and the trial can proceed with those who are actually adherent. And sometimes pilot studies needed to test these contexts. And blinding and placebo interventions, successful and complete blinding is very, very difficult, because one group are given a particular exercise, other groups are not given. It is very difficult to ensure blinding even from the patient's point of view. And that, because of that, associated factor is that use of placebo. Now, any placebo in a lifestyle intervention trial might have certain therapeutic effect, which is often might be due to an attention or Hawthorne effect, and might be because of the patients are doing it in a particular way, they are more coming for a follow-up, and they have a hope, and all these factors might give a positive response, positive placebo response. And even in a pragmatic trial, if you do, we know that the limitations of a pragmatic trial is this less internal validity and more inclusion of a heterogeneity. Informed consent process is one of the major limitation in deciding the patients, or in making them understand to come into participate in a lifestyle intervention trial. Because I told about patient-centeredness in prescribing, likewise patient-centeredness in a lifestyle intervention trial is also important. Because the active intervention is attractive, participants allocated to the control group are likely to be disappointed, and they may try to come in the other group and might have a imbalance in between the trials. So what are the common lifestyle intervention randomized trial designs? These designs we already know, I won't take much time. Parallel group, crossover group, a cluster randomized trial is often important when we go for a community-wise or a cluster-wise dietary interventions, maybe a supplement or so. And each has their main advantages and disadvantages. Even a longitudinal cohort with a nested RCT might be useful, but all has advantages and disadvantages. I will go to some special designs which are patient preference designs, and I will just browse through 3-4 such designs. One is the fully randomized preference designs, when patients are asked about their preference, and based on that randomize all eligible participants after consent, when they are absolutely okay that you might be put in the intervention group or then the control group, and then randomize. The second is the patient preference design, which is Gelen partially randomized preference design, which might, there are two types of Gelen's design. One is randomize all eligible participants into two groups, one is the intervention and other is the control. But at the second level, again you take a consent of the intervention and divide into two groups, yes, no, one intervention and another control. Likewise, so basically these are all meant to make the patients well informed and well aware that you might fall in the non-interventional or the control group, and based on that you give your consent. So again, another Gelen partial design is, again you randomize into intervention and control, and then take a consent of intervention, then again divide into two groups, and similarly you do for the control groups, and do a second group of treatment allocation. But every such designs, there are more such designs, like an Weinberg partially randomized preference design, when there is a random group and a preference group, and random group can undergo again two stage of randomization. Preference group can undergo a preferred treatment, which can be an intervention or control. But every such designs have their own advantages and disadvantages in terms of ethical issues, in terms of adherence. There is a Rakar partially randomized patient preference design, this Brevin partially randomized patient preference design. And even after all these designs, we have to be very cautious how to objectively measure the clinical outcomes of a lifestyle intervention trials. because the interventional effects here has a behavioral effect, has a lifestyle strategy related effects, because there will be dietary exercise, there will be physical activity, there will be retentions and participation in data, because some patients will be dropped out or can be dropped in. There can be locally cultural adaptation, often randomized design. Patients already being taught to do certain things in a certain way, but they might again modify it based on their socio-cultural values and context. Similarly, we need to look at the organizational sustainability about the staff and resourcing, about the cost of an intervention, whether it is possible to sustain at a certain level, and what is the community participation and their reluctancy or acceptability to do so if we do it in maybe a cluster randomized trial in a community. Finally, the translational sustainability, whether that's from an implementation research context, we need to understand the contextual equipoise, like we do as a clinical equipoise in a trial. Here, the contextual equipoise or the situational equipoise is also important, because these lifestyle factors also depend on contextual factors. So here we need to understand the replicability, the translational value, the scalability, the sustainability, the facilitators, and the barriers. So to conclude, there is no single best approach to the study of health interventions. In clinical and public health, decisions are always made with imperfect data, and conclusion might change over time, but promoting transparency in study methods and standardizing a particular design is important, and the goal must be actionable data sufficient for clinical and public health action, so that we can say here's what we recommend and why, based on a properly designed and robust data. So with this we end this presentation. Thank you so much for the listening. It's been a long day, and thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Saibal, for this wonderful deliberation. One thing is that I have just one question to you. As we are talking about trials, lifestyle intervention trials, and again you had talked about the Hawthorne effect. The thing is that when we are talking about trial with lifestyle, there is obvious issue, like if I am included in a brisk walking group, the other group, the group B, they also, there is a effect, they want to do that brisk walking. So there is a possibility of not getting that much benefit in the interventional arm. So from that point of view, what is your thought on observational study, rather going, or real world observational studies, rather than this controlled trial, when we are talking about checking the effect of lifestyle interventions? At the same time, you had talked about one very important design, the cluster randomized control. So what is that effect? Because very recently there is one study published by Mohan et al., and that is Dr. V. Mohan had done one very interesting study on that cluster randomized control on interventions like yoga, and he had shown some benefits. So that was published in a very good journal. So how that design can nullify the effect of that bias? So what is your take on that?
Yes, so thank you, Dr. Shambho, for these interesting questions. Now, firstly, a very well-designed, large observational study can provide more detailed and more reliable data than a poorly designed randomized control trial. This you have to understand. It's not that because we are doing an RCT, we have to do RCT, when it's a different scenario. Particularly lifestyle intervention trials are difficult to do, because to actually decide a clinical equipoise is a challenge. So in certain these cases where we want to see only the effect of a particular diet, maybe a community practices certain diet in a certain way, or a certain health behavior in a certain way for a long period of time, and the other is a matched control is not following. So getting the data from this particular community in an observational study can be very reliable and useful than actually doing it as an interventional way. So observational studies properly conducted can be a very good resource, and I showed that cluster randomized trial can be a good option, but we need to understand about the inter-cluster correlation coefficient there, how these groups are different or same. So those factors are, cluster randomized has also these negativities. Yes, sir.
So I have just to continue with that, how much of a role does qualitative research have in this kind of intervention trials?
Yes. So qualitative research, as I mentioned, can be considered as one of the tool of an implementation research, where we can understand, suppose the facilitators and barriers of a particular intervention, why a particular community or a group of individuals or at an individual level is taking or not following or not following a particular prescription, which can be a lifestyle intervention. So for that, qualitative research is very important. Suppose you find that if iron fortification is important to reduce maybe anemia in pregnant women, but in a particular area patients are not liking to take iron fortification, maybe because they are getting certain kind of adverse events. So to understand these contexts, qualitative research often is very important.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Saibal. You need a big round of applause. So, I will take the privilege of honoring you a little bit.
That's my privilege and pleasure.
And I also request my Dada, that is Dr. Tanmoy Vishwas, to please come with me to felicitate Dr. Saibal.
Thank you. এখন তো স্যার এই কলকাতাতে
Once more.
Thank you, Dr. Saibal. Now we will have a short GV meeting, and may I request our General Secretary, sir, to please come, Dr. Melvin George, and I think Professor Shantanu Tripathi sir is there. Okay, sir, I think there's some sound is coming up. Hello, sir. You are audible, but I think a very bad sound is coming from your side.
So, is it better now?
No, I think some sound is coming. Maybe your headphone is not working properly, sir. You can remove the headphone and you can talk directly.
Am I audible now?
You are audible, sir, but some background noise is coming. Now better. Now it's fine. Now it's fine.
Okay.
Okay, sir. Now I'm requesting Dr. Melvin.
Okay. A very good evening to every one of you who are part of this general body meeting of second National Conference of Association of Clinical Pharmacologists of India. So, yesterday we had our executive meeting and we had apprised the members there, even members there who had been part of the meeting, about the current status, and I will probably again put it across here for the benefit of everyone who are online as well as offline. To start with, I think the first question that is in everyone's mind is about the registration of the society. We have been having some roadblocks in getting the society registered. We tried it in 2-3 cities, but there were some issues there. So currently it's being done. It is happening in Pondicherry, and we are hoping to close this at least in the next 3 months. So we will hopefully come with good news that this society is registered. The second development that has happened yesterday is about the starting of the councils. So already there are different councils, and there are different council heads who are part of, who are supposed to head the council and lead the council and develop that council. For example, there is a council for research, there is a council for developing a journal for the society, there is a council for ethics, There is a council for academic planning. So there is a council for curriculum development. So there are different kinds of councils, almost some 7 to 8 councils are there. And each of these councils already we have selected heads. So what we will be doing is, we will be sending a general invitation to all of you. If you are having any interest to be a part of any council, you are free to do so, and you can express your interest that you would like to be part of a particular council and would be willing to give your time to help the society with respect to that particular council activity. So this is going to be kept open. We will be sending a message to all of you. That is the second development. The third development is regarding the NMC's recommendation, recent recommendations about prescribing generics. There was a lot of brainstorming which happened yesterday. So at the end of it, the decision that was taken was that as part of our society, we would be making a document and sending it across to NMC to express our views, what we felt about this decision. And also we would like to publish that in some medical journal eventually. And for this, Dr. Saibal and Dr. Shantanu Tripathi, both of them would be spearheading this statement from the society, and of course all of you can give your opinion for the same. If you have any particular points to discuss regarding this particular issue, you can always put it across to Saibal sir and Shantanu sir. So these are some of the immediate developments, and at this time we would also have to take a decision about the next year's conference. So again, regarding this also there were some discussions that happened. So there are 2 proposals which have come up so far. One is from Mumbai and the other is from Pondicherry. So a lot of discussions happen.
Another proposal. New proposal from Dr. Manjunath Nukala, that is by Dr. Puneet Dhamija sir. So he also want to conduct it in AIMS Rishikesh. So that is also another proposal.
Okay, so the third proposal has come now. So we have 3 proposals. One is from Mumbai, other is from Pondicherry, Chennai, and the third is from Rishikesh. So we'll have to take a call regarding this, and if there is any other proposal also, at this time the floor is open for people to give their suggestion, inputs on this. So we have not taken a decision regarding this. Dr. Bhaskar, you want to say something? Yeah. So yesterday in the discussion that we had, the final decision that was taken was okay to next year we would have Mumbai do it, and Dr. Bhaskar would take the step forward to see how the feasibility of doing that would happen. Next year we have to find a convenient date. So he had said that he would get back to us, but then now we have a new proposal from Rishikesh also. So thoughts, I would like to get opinion from everyone. So there's a lot of disturbance.
Hello?
Yes sir, please go ahead.
So regarding one thing, we had discussed about the venue and the KM, Dr. Bhaskar representing KM hospital. So that is, we can definitely consider, provided of course all the people present now in the GV meeting, they concur with it. And but then what we would expect that to meet a little more frequently, and for that the next conference we would like to have it in the month of February. Yesterday what we were discussing, that if we could have it on the 3rd week or 4th week of February. So whether finally the GV concurs about the venue at KM hospital with Dr. Bhaskar leading or anybody else, any other institution, we would rather expect that it is held in the month of February 2024. That's the one thing we...
Yeah, so yes, yes sir, please.
Yeah, it was finalized in this meeting that we'll give it to Mumbai, to Bhaskar, and it will be 4th week of February. And I withdraw that not in Pondicherry. Pondicherry can be next. But it's good that other proposal is coming and people are showing interest. So next year we'll decide about Rishikesh or Pondicherry. So this year we can give to Mumbai. Okay?
Okay. Yeah, so I think, so if there is no other objection, we would go ahead with Mumbai, but then the dates we would like to see it in February end is what is the general consensus. Everyone is okay with the end of February? Any other thoughts? Anyone online? Anybody wants to say anything? Okay. So then we all agree.
I think we appreciate very much that other centers have come forward, and thanks very much to Rishikesh for proposing it. February, if we want to have it in February, maybe for Mumbai, January, February, these are the months that you can have it in Mumbai, otherwise the weather becomes not too good there. On the other hand, in Rishikesh, February is still quite a cold time of the year. So maybe the year after that, we can either think Pondicherry or this. From a geographical point of view, we have had two meetings somewhat in the east, Patna and Kolkata. So now I think we do need to go to the west. We also need to go to the south. And indeed we need to go to the north, because Patna and Kolkata are not really in the north, though we have been saying north. So these three of them, now we have three choices I think for the next 3 years. We are well placed. If one does not get done next year, it will get done the year after that or the year after that. But we have three options lined up already.
Great.
Then we'll visit your home in Uttarakhand.
Okay. So then, as of now, we all in the GB are taking this decision to go ahead for February end of February on a convenient date where no other major conference is happening at the same time, and it will be in Mumbai. So Dr. Bhaskar will get back to us regarding the feasibility of doing this after discussing with the other members in KEM. Okay. Okay, and now if the floor is open to any other issues anybody else wants to raise, you can come forward. Yes, Dr. Saibal.
I just want to make one point.
Mic. Please use the mic.
Just I have one point. If we make it in February, it comes in the same financial year. So if someone coming from the government, or so if they want certain kind of reimbursement or certain approvals, they might ask that for the same conference in the same financial year, we might not support. So if it is after April, this issue gets done. So just a point.
Can I?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, my point is, Dr. Saibal, well taken your argument. But we, so far as this conference is concerned, Dr. Shambu will be able to tell us, is there anybody who has actually coming from any government institution and has used this, okay, from a distant place coming? I don't think there is anybody who has already utilized this opportunity of some kind of, you can say, from the institute getting support or getting the leave on for attending this particular conference.
No, sir. There is some people, some delegates, some faculties who had taken this benefit, and we have almost 5 or 6 faculties and a few delegates who had taken these benefits. I think those who are attached with some central institute, AIMS, ICMR, Nizam, they need these benefits, sir. So we also need to consider this argument. This is a very valid and well taken argument raised by Saibal.
I'm just asking Saibal, suppose you were to then, if that question is asked, is it a question asked, or is it that no, you will just not blanket, you will not get an approval? If a question is asked, then of course one can say that the previous conference was delayed and that's why this came into this financial year. This should have been in a previous financial year. And that is why there is a reason why these two meetings are coming into the same financial year. If that argument can be used, that's great. If it cannot, then we'll have to think of some other way.
So if it is finalized, Dr. Bhaskar, only 6 months is left for you, even less than 6 months, and we request from tomorrow onward you start working, and there will be no postponement, because with 3-4 postponement, some has done it.
So that is why, sir,
Yeah.
that is why,
The other option is, my request to Dr. Bhaskar, that can Dr. Bhaskar wait for the next year? And this year, if we can go to North and Dr. Rishikesh aims, so that they can have it in, say, March or April, and then maybe next year in February, Bhaskar can have it. That is just a request.
But we are just rolling the ball down the road, because the next year we'll have the same problem.
yeah. So I think, sir, my proposal is why not this time in the KEM also, maybe after March, that is April, if we can organize this conference. Yes, that will be little bit hot that time, but again Mumbai always have some monsoons also. The weather is not that too hot also.
No,
So
but it's not solving the problem. The problem is having 2 conferences.
no, in April.
In April it will be solved.
No, so this year that problem is solved. You are just taking the problem to the next year. Because next year then, or unless you decide that every year now, we will only have it in the beginning of the financial year, every time in April, May, then we are stuck with the summers.
So if it is this year April, then it will be again April 25, April 26, that way.
Okay.
Every year. No, let him take it.
Sir, I think the decision to take the conference, if you're going to have it in different, because you're going to have it in different venues, it will not be possible to have a single month where every time we have that. Like, for example, it might be okay to do it in February in Mumbai, but February Rishikesh is bad. So, if you're going through the next year, so we'll have to change the month. We cannot be fixed with the month. If we are going to accommodate different different locations. So
that's quite true. The only thing is that if you have it between February and March, then by March, places become, unless you're going high hills, Rishikesh and all are very pleasant in March, while Mumbai becomes really hot in March. So that's the thing. Mumbai, February is still okay.
Okay, so we are saying essentially that it's going to be February bar March. That is the first 3 months of the year. Jan, Feb, March. These 3 months.
Yeah, basically we are saying the end of the end of the financial year.
The fag end of the financial year. Okay.
If you do it that way.
So then we will take it as a decision. Henceforth, we will follow this. Starting from 2024, we will make it a practice that ACPI conferences will be held between Jan to March.
But
is that okay with everyone?
Just a question.
Yes.
It is how open are we? If let's say if the traveling to the venue or if things like that are becoming a problem, how open are we to have a fully online conference?
No.
Absolutely.
No.
We want to meet.
I don't agree. There has to be physical conference primarily. There might be some people joining online, but I would rather prefer as many people who can come and join physically. It has a different flavor when you interact people in person.
So it is Mumbai.
Yes, sir. Dr. Bhaskar will explore that and confirm it. But as of now, the decision here is Mumbai and Jan to March. But this year, please consider ISCR is having it in February first week, Hyderabad. So then that alone you should try to avoid that week.
Okay. Any other issue?
So and the other issue, any other issue from the audience?
Just a reiteration of the academic. Just a reiteration of the academic program that we had started and which again stopped midway. So we plan to restart it.
Yes, please.
So you have very short time.
Another thing is about the participation of the postgraduates, the DM postgraduates in this conference.
Let them attend, I think.
We should
need more
try to see how we can encourage our DMPGs to attend, because I think the attendance is quite sparse from the DMPGs of all institutes, including West Bengal.
Yeah, some concession should be given to the student.
There is this new accreditation, credits that you get, the new in the new guidelines that have come up from NMC. There's this accreditation system. I haven't gone deeply into that, but for clinical pharmacology, could we get continual medical CME credits or whatever?
For all
Credit point.
For this conference, are we getting it?
No, sir. There was some challenge in getting it because of the registration, so they could not get it.
One of the hindrances, unless the society is registered, it's not easy to get the accreditation from the NMC.
Yeah, but if we do get that accreditation, then that becomes an attractant for postgraduates.
Exactly. In fact, even like if we are doing it in Mumbai, then we get the Maharashtra MMC credit points. So that credit points will be valuable to whosoever is attending, both faculty as well as the delegates. And
no, they are also primarily have to be registered first.
Yes.
But if it is attached to KN, in that connection you will get the...
Hello. Yes, and another thing, I mean, just thinking out loud, selecting topics of course, the topics which are selected pertaining to the discipline. So I think that should also be more tailored to the postgraduates, and so that they also they also want to attend the conference.
No, that you decide in your scientific committee.
Yeah, that is a second
point of discussion in general body.
So what is your comment on the nature and quality of topics that were selected this time?
So this time they were very good, as in very pertaining to what is there in the DM curriculum.
You take their help.
But then that could also not been able to attract many of the DM PG students. Now I have a suggestion here that at this initial couple of years or maybe 3-4 years when the association is actually evolving, so during these years I think we need to meet more frequently than just once in a year. So this is my suggestion, that it may not be in the 2-3 day engagement, it could be even half a day. But in different parts of the country, if they can have a satellite meeting, academic meeting, where the local DM candidates they can join, and also encourage the MD candidates also, MD postgrad students also to join. So think of entrusting people from the different regions of the country to have small satellite programs, because that will also encourage involvement of more people. If we have 120 plus people having the DM degree, why can't they feel motivated to be involved in this kind of conferences? So I think we need to meet more frequently. May not be all of them, might not be possible, but then as many people at the local level they can meet, and I think the society or the association should encourage that. Over.
Yeah, I would like to put it on record that this year's program was very good, excellent program, but that is me saying we should ask at least those people who have the postgraduates and the younger delegates who have attended. We should take a feedback from them on any suggestions that they have. It should be a formal one in which we send an email out, have a little form which they enter their worded comments as well as some metrics.
We'll do that, sir.
If you can do that, then we'll get a true feedback on it.
We will make a Google form, and it will be an anonymous one. We will circulate and we'll take the feedback. Thank you, sir. One suggestion from my side is whether we, from our society, we can contact all the DM training institutes. We have maybe 8 or 9 institutes all over India. So just a meeting with all the heads, and we can decide whether we can involve their students in our future programs, maybe some online programs, maybe some masterclass like things, maybe some practical programs, practical case discussions. So whether we can involve more the departments. So that is my suggestion.
It's a good suggestion.
I think we must do that, and I think it can be minuted, and we should see the council, the individual council which is involved in this activity to take it forward.
For example, this entire thing of meta-analysis, and now the whole process. actually doing a meta-analysis, maybe even a 2-day program, which is people can join online. It doesn't need to be at a particular venue. But you take them through the entire process, somebody who knows that and has done that and can be the faculty. And it, I think, will be an excellent teaching experience for everybody with clinical pharmacology.
Any other inputs, suggestions?
Let us give them a standing hand clap.
Yeah, let us all rise to give a standing ovation to the organizing committee. Dr. Shambhu, you can just come here and I think please request you can call the organizing committee on stage and we can.
So may I request the pillars of our organizing team who are present today, starting from Dr. Shreyoshi Dashgupta, Dr. Saibal Dash, Rohan we are missing. I don't know whether you are there in online. Please come in the stage. And Dr. Shotobroto Shahu, Dr. Manos, Dr. Tonusri, you can come. And also I should thank Mr. Ranodip and Mr. Sani. You can join us also. Because your assistance for last 72 hours almost without any sleep. Thank you very much.
I'm really very sorry that I'm missing this occasion.
We are missing you.
Too, sir.
So I
great job done.
I think
sir,
you can.
Thank you.
Is it possible to open your video so that we can have you in the frame, sir? And make that video pinpointed. I am requesting pinpoint kore dao. Silent video. Yeah, pin. Yeah, now the picture is perfect, sir, with you.
Very good. Set with it.
Saibal esho.
Ready. Ready.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Yeah, close it.
Thank you very much. Thanks everybody.
Thank you, Shantanu, for your special.
Thank you, Shantanu, sir.
To you as the leader of this.
So if there is nothing else, we are closing this meeting. Thank you once again for your participation in the GP.
Thank you very much. I'll be joining tomorrow morning. Thank you very much.
Excuse me.
Now, may I request you all to please join us in the dinner. Dinner is there. Thank you all who are present online. Thank you. So good night. See you all tomorrow. Thank you, Shukantoda. Thank you, Dr. Bakchi sir. Thank you who are present today.